You think if you stay quiet, she'll finally understand you. But silence doesn't always create peace. Sometimes it creates a vacuum, and a vacuum gets filled with fear, fantasy, and overthinking. You think saying nothing keeps you in control, but if you don't understand why you're silent, then your silence is not power. It's avoidance, wearing a strong face. If you're the kind of man who needs real reminders instead of soft lies, subscribe now, because you do not need more comfort. You need the truth said clearly, again and again, until you stop betraying yourself with confusion. Let's get to it. When she expected you to explain everything and you said nothing, here's what it really means. It does not automatically mean you won. It does not automatically mean you're cold. It does not automatically mean you're mysterious, disciplined, or above the drama. Sometimes it means you finally refuse to perform. Sometimes it means you were tired of defending what should have been obvious. And sometimes, if you're honest, it means you didn't have the courage to speak with clarity, so you chose distance and called it strength. That distinction matters. That distinction changes everything. A lot of men get this wrong. They think the only two options are over-explaining or disappearing. They think if they speak, they look weak, and if they go silent, they look strong. False. That's a child's understanding of power. Real power is not panic talking. Real power is not passive silence. Real power is measured communication. Say what is true. Say only what is true. Say it once if once is enough. Then let reality do the heavy lifting. Because what most men call explaining is not explanation. It's pleading. It's auditioning. It's emotional paperwork submitted to somebody who already decided how they want to feel. You know what that looks like. Long paragraphs, constant clarifications, rewriting your intentions so they'll sound more acceptable. Turning your inner world into a courtroom. You stop leading. You stop standing. You stop respecting your own words. And the more you explain from that energy, the less believable you become. Why? Because people trust grounded presence more than frantic defense. But on the other side, some men swing too far. They get hurt once, disrespected once, misunderstood once, and now silence becomes their whole identity. Now every hard conversation is beneath them. Now every question is drama. Now every moment that requires emotional steadiness gets answered with distance. That's not strength either. That's emotional laziness. That's fear disguised as stoicism. That's called hiding. So what happened when she expected you to explain everything and you said nothing? Maybe she overthought because she was used to noise and couldn't handle reality without narration. Maybe she overthought because your silence forced her to sit with her own uncertainty. Maybe she overthought because, for the first time, you stopped chasing misunderstanding and started protecting your peace. But maybe she overthought because your silence was vague, inconsistent, and unresolved. You need the honesty to tell the difference. Here is the hard truth. Silence only has power when it sits on top of clarity. If you were clear and then became quiet, that can be strength. If you were unclear and then became quiet, that creates confusion. One is a boundary, the other is a fog. One says, I've said what matters and I won't beg to be understood. The other says, I don't know how to handle this, so I'm going dark. Do you see the difference? One comes from self-respect. The other comes from self-protection without self-awareness. And this is where most men lose themselves. They are not actually silent because they are peaceful. They are silent because they are flooded. They are angry. They are tired. They feel accused. They feel unseen. They don't trust themselves to speak without exploding, so they say nothing. Then later, they romanticize it. I stayed calm. No. Maybe you stayed shut down. Maybe you froze. Maybe you withdrew because you never learned how to be direct without being defensive. That matters because if you mislabel your wounds as wisdom, you will keep bleeding in places you call growth. Why does this happen? Root cause. Simple. You were trained to think your worth lives in being understood by others. That's the trap. So when somebody misreads you, questions you, or projects onto you, your nervous system lights up. You feel the urge to correct the record, to explain your intention, to prove your heart, to force the right conclusion. Why? Because part of you still believes misunderstanding equals rejection, and rejection means you lose value. That belief will make you talk too much. And when talking too much burns you out, you'll snap to the opposite extreme and say nothing at all. Same wound. Different costume. The deeper root is even harder to face. A lot of men do not know the difference between connection and approval. They think intimacy means constant access, constant reassurance, constant explanations, constant emotional availability on demand. No, that's not intimacy. That's dependency mixed with anxiety. Real connection can survive a pause. Real connection can survive a boundary. Real connection does not require you to abandon your center every time tension enters the room. So when she overthinks your silence, what is really happening? An unstable story is being written in the absence of grounded truth. Human beings hate uncertainty. They fill gaps. She fills the gap. You fill the gap. Everybody fills the gap. That's what the mind does. It reaches for a story because reality without a story feels unbearable. If she lacks security, she may tell herself your silence means rejection, punishment, betrayal, or indifference. If you lack security, you may tell yourself her reaction proves women are impossible, conversations are pointless, and emotional honesty never works. Both are stories. Both can be false. Both can cost you years. And let's talk about cost, because this is where the fantasy dies. The cost of over-explaining is self-abandonment. You start editing yourself until there is no self left. You become agreeable but resentful, present but not respected, available but not valued. You train people to believe your boundaries are negotiable if they just pressure you long enough. That is expensive. The cost of unhealthy silence is different but just as brutal. You become hard to trust, hard to reach, hard to build with, not because you're deep, because you're unclear. You create emotional debt. You leave conversations half-finished and call it detachment. You make other people guess, then blame them for guessing wrong. You think you're protecting your peace, but you're actually poisoning your relationships with ambiguity. That is expensive too. So what's the reframe? Here it is. Your job is not to make sure everyone interprets you correctly. Your job is to be clear, honest, and aligned. After that, their interpretation belongs to them. Read that again in your bones. Your job is not to manage every feeling in the room. Your job is not to over-explain until you feel innocent enough to rest. Your job is to tell the truth cleanly and stand on it without apology. That changes the whole game. Because a grounded man does not speak to control perception. He speaks to represent reality. He does not explain himself 10 times because somebody is uncomfortable. He does not disappear because tension rises. He says what is true, and then he watches what that truth reveals. Who can hear it? Who distorts it? Who respects it? Who punishes it? Who tries to drag him back into chaos? Clarity is not just communication. Clarity is a filter. That's why silence can be powerful, but only after truth has been placed in the room. If you already said, I meant what I said, I'm not arguing in circles, I'm open to respectful conversation, not endless accusation, then silence. After that is not avoidance. That's called a boundary. That's called refusing emotional manipulation without becoming manipulative yourself. That's called self-command. But if you never said anything clear and just vanished into mood and distance, then no, brother, that is not discipline. That is an undeveloped voice. Picture the man you are supposed to become, not the loud man, not the cold man, not the man performing alpha lines off the internet. The man, the one whose nervous system is not controlled by someone else's confusion, the one who does not rush to defend what his life already proves, the one who can look someone in the eye and say, I hear your feelings. I'm not here to fight your imagination. Here is what is true. Then he stops. He does not ramble. He does not tremble. He does not chase. He does not punish. He remains grounded, measured, solid. That man has boundaries, but they are not theatrical. He does not announce his standards every 5 minutes. He lives them. His time has shape. His attention has value. His words are sparse because his life is ordered, not because he is trying to seem important. He has purpose, so he is not addicted to emotional turbulence. He has self-respect, so he does not beg for perfect interpretation. He has emotional discipline, so he can stay present without surrendering his center. When he speaks, you feel gravity. When he is quiet, you feel peace, not punishment. That is the difference. And understand this clearly. The goal is not to make her overthink. The goal is not to trigger regret. The goal is not to win by withholding. That is still weakness. That is still being controlled by reaction. The goal is to stop explaining yourself from a place of fear. The goal is to stop using silence as a weapon when you don't know how to use words with precision. The goal is self-possession. The goal is inner alignment. The goal is to become a man whose communication reflects dignity instead of panic. So what do you do now? First, stop sending endless explanations to people committed to misunderstanding you. Stop writing essays to people who only read for ammunition. Stop confusing access with intimacy. Stop mistaking emotional intensity for emotional depth. Stop talking just because silence makes you nervous. Stop going silent just because truth feels uncomfortable. Stop living in those extremes. Then do this. Slow down before you answer. Feel the impulse to defend. Do not obey it immediately. Ask yourself one question. What is actually true here? Not what will calm them down fastest. Not what makes you look best. What is true? Then say that. Short, clean, direct. That's not what I meant. I'm willing to talk, not argue. I've been clear. I'm not discussing this in circles. I need space, and I'll reconnect when I can speak clearly. That is communication with spine. Next, stop explaining your character and start demonstrating your character. If you're loyal, be loyal. If you're serious, be consistent. If you respect her, let your actions carry that weight. If you're done, be done cleanly. No mixed signals. No late-night emotional leftovers. No disappearing and reappearing because loneliness hit. No pretending to be unsure when you already know. Ambiguity is expensive. Clarity is mercy. Redirect your energy. Instead of obsessing over how she interprets your silence, ask why her interpretation still has the power to shake your identity. That is the real work. Build a life that steadies you. Get your body right. Get your money disciplined. Get your mission defined. Get your habits clean. Get around men who tell you the truth, not men who hype your dysfunction and call it masculinity. Because the weaker your foundation, the more you will need emotional situations to validate you. And the stronger your foundation, the less you will chase understanding from people who are not equipped to give it. You want to know why some men are constantly dragged into emotional chaos? Because they are available to chaos. They have no internal structure, no standards for conversation, no threshold for disrespect, no timeline for resolution. They stay in loops because loops feel familiar. They explain, defend, react, withdraw, return, repeat, again and again. Same pain, new day. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. And a pattern is just a prison you've practiced long enough to call personality. Break it. When a conversation is real, meet it with presence. When a conversation becomes circular, meet it with boundaries. When someone wants understanding, offer truth. When someone wants control, offer distance. Presence versus silence. Reality versus fantasy. Peace versus performance. This is not complicated once your self-respect comes online. And yes, some people will not like the new you. They like the version of you that could be pulled into endless explanation. They like the version of you that worked overtime to maintain emotional comfort for everyone but himself. They like the version of you that confused patience with tolerance and empathy with self-erasure. When that man dies, certain dynamics die with him. Let them. Because the man you are becoming does not fear being misunderstood for a season if it means staying true for a lifetime. He knows that clarity may disappoint people who benefited from his confusion. He knows that boundaries will offend people who profited from his overavailability. He knows that silence, used correctly, is not emptiness. it is space around truth. It is the refusal to decorate reality so other people can avoid growing up. But hear me carefully. Use silence to protect truth, not to escape it. If you owe clarity, give clarity. If you made a mistake, own it. If you caused pain, address it directly. Self-respect is not stubbornness. Self-respect is not ego. Self-respect is the ability to stand inside reality without shrinking, spinning, or performing. Sometimes that means speaking first. Sometimes that means refusing to repeat yourself. Wisdom is knowing which moment you are in. And if she overthinks because you stopped over-explaining, that may be the first time the relationship is no longer being carried by your anxiety. Let that land. Maybe your constant explaining was not love. Maybe it was fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of being blamed. Fear of being seen as the bad guy. Fear of standing in your own truth without immediate approval. Once that fear loosens, your whole presence changes. You become calmer, sharper, less available for nonsense, more available for what is real. That's when your silence changes texture. It no longer feels like withdrawal. It feels like weight. It feels like a man who is not scrambling, a man who is not trying to engineer perception, a man who knows that truth does not need 1,000 words. It needs congruence. It needs restraint. It needs timing. It needs a backbone. So the next time you feel that urge to explain everything, pause. The next time you feel the urge to disappear completely, pause. Refuse both impulses until you can act from self-respect. Speak when truth requires it. Be silent when repetition would become self-betrayal. Stay if the conversation is honest. Leave if the conversation becomes a theater of projection. This is how you reclaim yourself. Not by dominating, not by manipulating, by returning to center. And once you return to center, everything changes. Your words get cleaner, your standards get stronger, your relationships get more honest, your exits get more peaceful, your energy stops leaking into people who only value you when you're explaining yourself. You stop auditioning for understanding. You stop panicking when someone misreads you. You stop trying to rescue every connection. You stop. Then you start. You start standing, you start choosing, you start speaking like your words matter, you start leaving when your dignity is the price of staying, you start becoming recognizable to yourself again. That is the point. You are not here to be endlessly interpreted. You are not here to live inside someone else's unfinished story about you. You are not here to explain your soul to people addicted to confusion. You are here to become so internally aligned that your presence speaks before your mouth ever has to. And when you do speak, it is enough. So no, this is not about making her overthink. This is about making you wake up. This is about ending the habit of bleeding your truth out in long explanations just to feel safe. This is about ending the cowardice of hiding in silence when clarity is required. This is about becoming a man whose peace is built on self-respect, not avoidance. A man whose quiet has meaning because his words have backbone. A man whose love is honest because his identity is no longer for sale. Remember this, you do not need to explain yourself into worth. You do not need to be perfectly understood to remain solid. You do not need to chase closure from people committed to confusion. You need clarity. You need boundaries. You need discipline. You need truth. You need to come home to yourself so fully that whether someone overthinks or understands, you remain who you are. That is freedom. And that is why you are the answer, not her reaction, not their opinion, not the story told about your silence. You, your standards, your clarity, your restraint. Your willingness to tell the truth and live with the consequences like a grown man. You are the answer. If you want more of this kind of truth, no fluff, no begging, no confusion, subscribe because you need these reminders until they become identity. And if you're done performing, done over-explaining, done abandoning yourself just to keep the peace, then you're not alone. You're with men who are choosing clarity, self-respect, and the hard road back to themselves.